Operation Storm 333 has just begun. That is the code name given by the Soviets for the invasion of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is bogged down by war. The Soviets have complete mastery in the skies, but on land, the Mujaheddin managed to control a great part of the country. Ronald Reagan's America then decides to intensify its support of Afghan resistance. A war of symbols emerges. International Soviet friendship versus the free world, lined up behind the Star-Spangled Banner.
Just as the Columbia, we think, represents man's finest aspirations in the field of science and technology, so too does the struggle of the Afghan people represent man's highest aspirations for freedom. I am dedicating, on behalf of the American people, the March 22nd launch of the Columbia to the people of Afghanistan.
Reagan had defined the Soviet Union as the evil empire. I mean, this is in terms of, good and evil. So now we're on religious grounds here. And I think there was a crusade against godless communism. And I think that the Christian right enthusiastically supported his policies aimed at stopping communism. Here's what's really interesting. As part of this crusade against godless communism, who did we support in the 80s in Afghanistan? The Islamic fundamentalists. See, in those days, jihadist was not a bad word. Nowadays, jihadist in American lexicon, and I think European as well, has become synonymous with terrorist. But under the Reagan era, when the United States was supporting the Afghan freedom fighters, jihadist and freedom fighter was synonymous. And that's the way Reagan, the great communicator, he was always referring to the Mujaheddin that we were supporting as freedom fighters. Reagan openly supported jihadists, including some that are now fighting us.
At the very same time, another group began to arrive in Afghanistan to fight alongside the Mujaheddin. They were Arabs from across the Middle East who had been told by their religious leaders that their duty was to go and free Muslim lands from the Soviet invader.
I saw the fatwa, the order, saying that every Muslim has a duty to help the Afghans to liberate their land. But I had no idea where is this Afghanistan, how can I go there. I've never heard about Afghanistan. I've never heard in the map which airline goes there. From where can I take the visa? 100 questions. But I did meet Abdullah Azzam.
Abdullah Azzam was a charismatic religious leader who had begun to organize the Arab volunteers in Afghanistan. He had set up what he called the Services Bureau in Peshawar on the Afghan border. It became the headquarters of an international brigade of Arab fighters.
Azzam is a Palestinian whose hometown was occupied by Israel after the Arabs' crushing defeat in the Six-Day War. More than anyone, it is Azzam who has inspired Muslims, including bin Laden, to head to Afghanistan. The men give their organization an unassuming name, the Office of Services.
Azzam quickly became one of the most powerful figures in the battle against the Soviets. He was allowed to visit America on many occasions, both to raise funds and recruit volunteers for the jihad. But like the neoconservatives, Azzam also saw the struggle against the Soviets as just the first step in a much wider revolution. He was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood who wanted Islam to play a political role in governing Muslim societies. And Abdullah Azzam believed that the Arabs in Afghanistan could be the nucleus of a new political force. They would return to their own countries and persuade the people to reject the corrupt, autocratic regimes that dominated the Middle East. One of Azzam's closest aides was a Saudi, Osama bin Laden.
Osama came to participate in '85. When he came, he came from a rich family from Saudi, and he had much money to spend. Sheikh Abdullah Azzam was a scholar. He can organize the Afghans, but he is not a rich man. So when Osama came, he filled in this gap. So the main duty of Osama in that time was spending money.
One of the most powerful of these newcomers was Ayman Zawahiri. He was the leader of a radical faction from Egypt called Islamic Jihad, and he was convinced that they, not the moderates, were the true Islamists.
We are here. We are here. The real Islamic Front. We are here. The real Islamic Front and the real Islamic opposition against Zionism. We are here. The real Islamic Front against Zionism, communism and imperialism.
Zawahiri and his small group settled in Peshawar. They began to spread this new idea among the foreign fighters, radicalizing the Islamist movement. It was not only a direct challenge to the moderate ideas of Abdullah Azzam, but it also involved a militant rejection of all American influence over the jihad, because America was the source of this corruption. Then, in 1987, the new Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev decided he was going to withdraw Russian troops from Afghanistan. Gorbachev asked the Americans to help him negotiate a peace that would create a stable government in Afghanistan. But the hardliners in Washington refused point blank. They would continue to help the Mujaheddin until the last Russians left, without any negotiation. The future of Afghanistan would then be decided, they said, by the freedom fighters.
I think that basically we've asked the United States, help us get out if you're really interested in stopping the bloodshed.
But can you get out and leave a government in Afghanistan that supports, that is a friend of the Soviet Union? I
believe that we can get out, provided that indeed no more aid is given to what people here call freedom fighters and what we call counter-revolutionaries. I believe that's possible, provided that the United States is also interested in the same.
Well, it's not very complicated. They arrived in a matter of days on Christmas Eve in 1979. They could be home by Christmas Eve if they decided to leave Afghanistan and let the Afghans decide their own future. If you leave, the problem of support to the Mujahideen solves itself.
But there was a deep rift within the Islamist fighters based in Peshawar, between the moderates, led by Abdullah Azzam, who believed this revolution could be accomplished politically, and the extremists, like Ayman Zawahiri, who saw violent revolution as the only way. And Zawahiri now set out to extend his influence over the movement and to undermine Abdullah Azzam. To do this, he seduced Osama bin Laden and his money away from Azzam. He promised bin Laden that he could become the emir, the leader of Zawahiri's small extremist group, Islamic Jihad.
November 1989. Bin Laden's partner, Abdullah Azzam, is driving to a mosque in Peshawar, Pakistan with two of his sons. A car bomb explodes, killing them instantly. The murder, never solved, has the hallmarks of a mob rub-out. With Azzam out of the way, bin Laden quickly reorganizes the jihad network.
For Ayman Zawahiri, groups of radical Islamists who had developed his theories in even more extreme forms now set out to create violent revolutions in Algeria and Egypt.
Jalalabad, Afghanistan, summer 1996. Bin Laden has returned to the country that launched his career as a holy warrior. Bin Laden calls for a new holy war to evict U.S. troops from Saudi Arabia. He intends to launch this jihad from his base in Afghanistan.
It sent shockwaves through us. It was pretty clear from the first that bin Laden meant what he said, but it didn't catch much attention.
September 1996, a radical Islamic sect called the Taliban seizes control of the Afghan government and its capital city, Kabul. In exchange for millions of dollars in al-Qaeda funding, the Taliban agreed to provide a haven for bin Laden and his organization. In the spring of 1998, the CIA plan to snatch bin Laden moves forward with the tacit approval of the White House. They want to capture but not kill bin Laden. The goal is to bring him to trial for a series of crimes. It's a list that includes the training of militiamen who shot down 2 American helicopters and killed 18 Army Rangers in Somalia. the 1993 attack became known as Black Hawk Down. May 20th, the CIA runs a full rehearsal with its local allies, Afghan militiamen opposed to bin Laden and the Taliban. The plan is for the militiamen to capture bin Laden and take him to a desert landing zone. From there, the al-Qaeda leader would be flown out of the country. That very same week, inside a tent in a remote compound in southern Afghanistan, Osama bin Laden tapes an interview with ABC News correspondent John Miller. Bin Laden's message is crystal clear. He demands that U.S. troops leave Saudi Arabia, where they have been stationed since the 1991 Gulf War. If not, he threatens more attacks like the 1993 truck bombing of the World Trade Center.
We anticipate a black future for America. If the present injustice continues, it will inevitably move the battle to American soil, just as Ramzi Youssef and others have done.
Bin Laden said many things that at the time, I have to say, sounded a little hyperbolic and unlikely. He declared war on the United States. Yeah, you and what army?
Nairobi, Kenya, August 7th, 1998. A bomb-laden truck explodes outside the American embassy, tearing the facade off the building. 5 minutes later, a second blast nearly levels the U.S. Embassy in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The twin attacks kill more than 200 people, including 12 Americans. Many of the victims are Muslims. 2 weeks later, President Clinton orders retaliation. The U.S. unleashes scores of Tomahawk cruise missiles against targets in Sudan and Afghanistan, including a pharmaceutical plant in Khartoum, Sudan, that was allegedly producing chemicals used to make nerve gas. Some Americans, however, view the military strikes as a way for the president to divert attention from another crisis, a sex scandal involving Clinton and a White House intern named Monica Lewinsky.
The bombings had a dramatic effect on the West. For the first time, the name bin Laden entered the public consciousness as a terrorist mastermind. The suicide bombers had been recruited by bin Laden from the Islamist training camps in Afghanistan, but his and Zawahiri's operation was very much on the fringes of the Islamist movement. The overwhelming majority of the fighters in these camps had nothing at all to do with bin Laden or international terrorism. They were training to fight the regimes in their own countries, such as Uzbekistan, Kashmir and Chechnya. Their aim was to establish Islamist societies in the Muslim world, and they had no interest in attacking America. Bin Laden helped fund some of the camps, and in return was allowed to look for volunteers for his operation. But a number of senior Islamists were against his new strategy, including members of Zawahiri's own group, Islamic Jihad. Even bin Laden's displays of strength for the Western media were faked. The fighters in this video had been hired for the day and told to bring their own weapons. For beyond his own small group, bin Laden had no formal organization, until the Americans invented one for him. In January 2001, a trial began in a Manhattan courtroom of 4 men accused of the embassy bombings in East Africa. But the Americans had also decided to prosecute bin Laden in his absence. But to do this under American law, the prosecutors needed evidence of a criminal organization, because as with the mafia, that would allow them to prosecute the head of the organization, even if he could not be linked directly to the crime. And the evidence for that organization was provided for them by an ex-associate of bin Laden's called Jamal al-Fadl. In reality, Jamal al-Fadl was on the run from bin Laden, having stolen money from him. In return for his evidence, the Americans gave him witness protection in America and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Many lawyers at the trial believed that al-Fadl exaggerated and lied to give the Americans the picture of a terrorist organization that they needed to prosecute bin Laden.
And there were selective portions of al-Fadl's testimony that I believe was false to help support the picture that he helped the Americans join together. I think he lied in a number of specific testimony about a unified image of what this organization was.
The idea, which is critical to the FBI's prosecution, that bin Laden ran a coherent organisation with operatives and cells all around the world, of which you could be a member, is a myth. There is no Al-Qaeda organisation. There is no international network with a leader, with cadres who will unquestioningly obey orders, with tentacles that stretch out to sleeper cells in America, in Africa, in Europe. That idea of a coherent, structured terrorist network with an organised capability simply does not exist.
The picture Al-Fadl drew for the Americans of bin Laden was of an all-powerful figure at the head of a large terrorist network that had an organised hierarchy of control. He also said that bin Laden had given this network a name, Al-Qaeda. It was a dramatic and powerful picture of bin Laden, but it bore little relationship to the truth. The reality was that bin Laden and Ayman Zawahiri had become the focus of a loose association of disillusioned Islamist militants who were attracted by the new strategy. But there was no organisation. These were militants who mostly planned their own operations and looked to bin Laden for funding and assistance. He was not their commander. There is also no evidence that bin Laden used the term Al-Qaeda to refer to the name of a group until after September the 11th, when he realised that this was the term the Americans had given him.